Good morning, everyone. Welcome into the Trade to Black podcast Friday morning up for the long weekend. We're going to have a nice long weekend and take a break. So thanks for checking in. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Lots to talk about before you send you off. I think we all need to chill out, relax. Yes, there's some swap holding questions going on related to MSO's ETF. We'll dive into that as well. Minnesota news, Ethereum, their ETF, it was approved. What's that mean for Ethereum moving forward? We'll talk about that with Dan from the Chart Guys in a moment. And as well, lots going on, never ever ending story regarding this cannabis space. Lots to talk about as we recap some of the news this week. So let's welcome in TDR host Anthony Varrell here on a Friday morning. I know that you're checking out right after this podcast and heading out for the long weekend. So yeah, probably a good time, especially looking at this space right now. But I think people need to take a step back and stop watching this so closely because we've said this for a couple of weeks now. We get into the summer months, and yeah, we're at that stage now where you're either in long term or you need to get out, right?
Yeah, I mean, I said it this morning. I mean, Doug, don't get me wrong. The daily price action is demoralizing. I mean, people are going to lose their fucking minds just sitting there looking at charts and stocks on a daily basis. But until TrueLeaf starts making less money, and until GTI starts making less money, and until the demand curve for cannabis from consumers starts to go down into the left and not aggressively up and to the right, I'm still going to continue to pay attention to this sector, take it seriously in stride, and continue to have conviction in it, regardless of the day-to-day price action.
I love the tweet that you pushed out this morning. It's actually on our Dales Report Twitter handle. It was actually from 10 Baggers who, in some ways, I guess, what was that tweet? I'm just trying to bring it up.
It was verbatim what I just said.
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to go into detail word for word, but you're right. It's like, I don't see these companies. Oh, well, first of all, he made a point about, should we be concerned about being on the OTC and these companies going private? But what was your response? Or like, with a lot of the debt related to these companies, like, can they go private?
I mean, it'd be hard to take a lot of these companies private, but at the same time, like, I think saying that some of the companies could go private, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, would I be surprised to see a cannabis company go private? No. Do I think that that's going to become reality? Absolutely not. That's not going to be part of the story here. I think
Bless you.
Taking cannabis companies private, I don't think is going to be part of the story anytime soon.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought it was pretty bang on. I'm going to give you a hint. Until the MSO's business plans fall apart and the demand for cannabis starts to go down versus up, we could care less about the day-to-day price movements, as you just alluded to. But yeah, very good points. It's Friday, so let's welcome in our good friend Guap. Good to see you, Guap, on a Friday. How are things, my friend?
Greetings, guys. Happy Friday. What year was it that Joe Biden tweeted he was going to reschedule cannabis? Oh, right, last week. Here we go.
Yeah, right.
Everyone.
Yeah, it's I sometimes question, like, we're on here every single week trying to provide, we're not giving investment advice, but providing education with thought leaders on this space. But sometimes I feel like,
do I have to lead everyone through another breathing exercise? Is everyone okay?
That's just it. I find sometimes it just goes in one ear and out the other. We had Dan from the Chart Guys on 2 weeks ago, and his position was he had put everything into cash at this point as we head into the summer months. But we all know historically this is what happens.
That's not a bad strategy. I mean,
it's not a bad strategy.
What Dan said makes perfect sense. What works for me doesn't work for you and doesn't work for Dan. I mean, Dan saying story's not going anywhere anytime soon. This is what history is telling me. I'm taking my cannabis exposure and putting it into cash. For Dan, that works. For me, that sounds more than sensible. And I mean, that shouldn't be seen as negative. I mean, what somebody else does with their money, that's their own prerogative.
Yeah, and for me,
that's Dan's style. That's Dan's style of investing. I don't blame him for doing that whatsoever. I think that is a smart move. If we're talking about capital preservation, if we're talking about capital preservation, which is one of Dan's main MOs, to make sure that his stack stays as large as possible, to make swings on a daily basis, that makes sense. I mean, people thinking that's negative it's kind of bullshit.
Midnight writes, the guy yesterday was the best guest ever. If you didn't see podcasts yesterday, you should. Absolutely. We are very fortunate to have access to Mark Yusko. So I want you guys, if you haven't had a chance, go on. We talk about the Ethereum ETF, but at the same time, there is some fascinating stuff that he understands about just global economics, was talking about Japan and their GDP, how America is actually just like Japan, only 10 years behind. We asked questions as to what the U.S. economy looks like 10 years from now. But this is a former hedge fund manager that's big and obviously into Bitcoin. But Anthony, he sees the big picture. And I'm sure with his network of contacts across the world, very smart person. And that's why I'm saying, look, be a sponge and soak everything up with the information that he's providing. Because we were very, very fortunate and lucky to get access to him and the information that he's able to share with us, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, I thoroughly enjoy talking with him. I mean, obviously, it's no secret to anybody. I mean, I pay a lot of attention to crypto. I pay a lot of attention to AI and technology. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love cannabis, but I find a lot of things more interesting than cannabis. And I mean, with Mark, those conversations usually spiral into macroeconomics, policy,
Yeah.
overall philosophy, history. It's always a good conversation having him on the podcast.
And the times we're living in now in comparison to the 1910s of the Bolsheviks, that was an interesting part of the conversation. So if you want to learn
I got
more,
a little bit out of my comfort zone as per like conversation on camera, but it's there's a lot of parallels with what's going on and what was going on back then.
yeah. And if you just for people know, Mark Yusko, like he attends a lot of big investor conferences and is a speaker at some of these events in front of thousands of people. So again, if we have access to him, have a listen, and he's there for reasons. And I think you'll get a lot out of it. Okay, let's jump into today's show. TDR Trade Black podcast. Good morning, Friday morning. I'm your host, Shad Dales, on with Guap Fridays and Anthony Varrell. And we jump into the wire and begin with news involving the Farm Bill and how the U.S. House Committee on Agriculture voted on Thursday to approve an amendment which was proposed by the Republican Representative Mary Miller for Illinois that would ban intoxicated hemp-derived products like Delta-8. So this is all in an effort, as we know, to put an end to the gray market. I guess we'll start with that. Anthony, Guap, whoever wants to start first, what's the latest? And I guess, is this good news or a good thing for the overall industry or cannabis industry?
So it passed the House in the markup. I mean, that's a positive. It's also another form of prohibition, which, I mean, if you're a purist, it could be seen as a negative. It's also got to go to the Senate where it's going to die. I don't think there's any way McConnell lets that thing pass, or any of the other senators that are completely silent as it relates to cannabis. But as long as it's hemp, it doesn't matter. As it's in their best interest in states like Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Kentucky, Tennessee. I mean, that corridor is large for industrial hemp. But I mean, realistically, I think what we should be talking about conversationally is hemp needs to be taken out of the Farm Bill. Hemp needs to be homogenized with cannabis under the rescheduling laws under the rescheduling framework that we're going to get. It's the same plant pretty much at the end of the day with different regulations. It makes absolutely zero sense to bifurcate hemp and put it in the Farm Bill.
So for people
that
learning
needs to be done away with.
Yeah. So for people that look, we all know people that follow the space understand why, but for those that don't, why to like just outline why it needs to be tailored in the same as cannabis. For
because it
people
is
that are
cannabis, but
exactly.
It's easy. It is cannabis. It found its way into the Farm Bill under the industrial hemp loophole because guys like Mitch McConnell had an economic interest in getting it through, and that was the way that they could do it and circumvent the CSA. It's as easy as that. It's very good political engineering on their part, sneaking it in there and getting it done. And because of that, we have literally THC flower being sold at gas stations to anybody. Like, that's dangerous. That is something that is not that's not cool. Like I said, it needs to be homogenized. And if you're going to put cannabis in Schedule 3, or you're going to start to really write serious framework around cannabis regulatory needs, take hemp out of the Farm Bill, put it over there, and actually classify it the way it should be classified.
It backs up everything that we learned in Washington. Nobody wants to put their fingerprints on the term cannabis and passing anything, but there's ways around it. And clearly, guys like Mitch McConnell and I'm sure others are benefiting from this, Guap.
Yeah, this could take a while. Like I said, at the first time I was on this show, I think everyone's in agreement unless you are exploiting this loophole and making a ton of money on it because you don't have to test your products, you're not taxed by 280E, etc. Unless you're benefiting from this loophole, I think everyone's in agreement about those products need to go away. How we get there is what we're really talking about. The Farm Bill could be the way. I completely agree with what Anthony's saying in terms of, in an ideal world, it's all descheduled. There's a free market. And if there's a state legal cannabis in a state, you're not going to see any of this D8 stuff at all. It's just going to go away naturally. But here we are. It's going to take a bit. And it's not a done deal yet, right? Like this was, according to Don Murphy, who was in the room, a tepid was the word he used, voice vote. It's going to be marked up, twisted, rewritten in a bunch of different ways. The Farm Bill has 1,000 different things going on with a bunch of special interests. This is just one of many, right? So this is not what the Farm Bill is all about. And yeah, it's the only the only arguments you heard in the room were from people who were saying, look, in my district, there's a lot of people who have businesses that are predicated on this loophole continuing.
Yeah.
Kind of a weak argument, but they're representing their people in a sense. And then there's also concerns about, the phrasing was any amount, quote, any amount of quantifiable THC, and how could that affect regular old CBD products, right?
Yeah.
So most likely the outcome of this is THCA goes away, Delta-8 goes away, Delta-10 goes away, HHC, THCP, THC0. I personally have no problem with that. It's just, when's the last time banning something worked, right?
Yeah.
So we'll
I
see how it all plays out, but hopefully the CBD products continue.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you, and I think people need to realize, like, Delta-8, like, remember spice and bath salts? Delta-8's the same shit, literally, pretty much, to an extent. It's what people are using to circumvent drug tests, and because they can't smoke Delta-9 THC because it's going to show up on a drug test, they're taking Delta-8. Also, it's more accessible to minors.
A drug test on Delta-8, and I don't think that I'm going to have to disagree with you there. Delta-8 has shown to have some medicinal value. Again, look, I'm splitting hairs here, and it's kind of like a weak version of good old Delta-9. So for some people who could see medical benefit, I think there's better consumption methods. I just spraying distillate on hemp flower. That's what I'm talking about. Let's get rid of that, right?
Yeah, it's garbage.
And the average consumer is not up to speed on all this. And so the real risk to the legal industry is there, which is if this stuff continues to be out there, and something bad happens, or, there's the wrong kind of chemicals in the vapes, or someone smokes way too much distillate sprayed flower or whatever, it doesn't look good for the cannabis industry, and it's very difficult for the public to be up to speed on this, and the media to be up to speed on this. So there's too much risk there. How we actually get this done, I don't think we're going to be happy, because I think the Farm Bill is going to take care of this loophole. That was my prediction. I didn't say I agree with it. I just said it was going to happen. But we'll see, right? We're going to track this one really closely, because I do think it impacts the industry. What do you think about that, Anthony?
I think it impacts the industry. I just don't think we know how it's going to impact the industry.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, I mean, I really want to just get ripped out of the Farm Bill, homogenize all of the framework under one banner, just as it relates to cannabis, and we move on. There's no reason for it to be in the Farm Bill. There's
not much to stand on there, but at the end of the day, I think it's kind of like what we talked about with Jason and Emily and Josh on Wednesday. All we want is a level playing field. I don't think this industry is asking for too much, right? It's just like legalize. Go ahead. You think you froze there? Go ahead. Sorry, you got cut off there.
Yeah, but it was. I mean, I think a level playing field is a little bit too much to ask in the United States. I mean, to an extent, you think?
Schedule
I drug. and all the bullshit that we've dealt with for the past couple of decades.
It is, which is kind of sad, but at the end of the day, one can only hope with some of the stuff that's gone on in Massachusetts, and step in the right direction with rescheduling. Who knows what happens with regards to safe? I'm not going to speculate. That's a way down the road, but truthfully, at the end of the day, you look back at this from a 40,000 foot view, and we're not asking, I think, a lot for this industry just to grow. It's just like, look, we can provide jobs, provide tax revenue for specific states. I'm kind of ranting right now, but truthfully, we're not asking for a lot here. But let's now shift to Minnesota. News from Minnesota this week, which over this past weekend, the Minnesota legislature gave final approval to a broad package of new rules for the state's upcoming recreational marijuana industry, giving businesses a clearer picture of what to expect for next steps. So speaking of next steps, concerning the recreational model, what can we expect next, and why is this important, Anthony?
Yeah, this was a big win. More specifically, this was a big win for two companies, two publicly traded companies, Goodness Growth and Curaleaf. They're two of the only operators in Minnesota. This was good language and guidance around the recreational rollout, a lot of social equity language. But I mean, the biggest takeaway here is that they're going to be able to co-locate the recreational dispensaries within their medical operations. And they're going to be allowed one retail shop in 8 of Minnesota's congressional districts. So I'm assuming this is going to look something like Virginia as they put mandates around I get where you're going with that, Guap. It's going to look something like Virginia, where the amount of licenses per jurisdiction. The only thing that stuck out to me that was a little bit alarming is it's going to allow for municipal governments to own their own dispensaries in the state of Minnesota. I don't think we need municipal governments getting in the business of cannabis retail.
We got to reach out to Tyler Burline regarding that.
It's not something that I like seeing. They're going to be issued permits without having to actually go through the lottery system. So the actual governments are going to get preferential treatment. They'll be able to circumvent the systems that are in place. And those shops actually won't count towards the retail cap in a municipality. So
really,
there's a lot to there's a lot to like here. It's like we took 2 steps forward and 1 step back, not 1 step forward and 2 steps back. I'll wait to see if the municipalities actually act on this.
It's the same story. Fuck, this is unbelievable. It's the same story as what we're seeing in fucking this farm bill. It's just there's ways around it.
I'd be very curious to hear from a government affairs personnel from Curaleaf or Goodness Growth as to what they think the implications are going to be with this potential municipal run cannabis dispensary model. But that's all we know right now is that top line headline. So I'll reach out to a couple of people to try to get some comment next week. And hopefully someone from Curaleaf or Goodness Growth could give us a little bit of clarity as it weighs into how that will impact their operations in the state, and if that's going to be a threat from a competitive standpoint.
Yeah, we had Tyler Burline on probably 6-7 weeks ago. We talked about this, and I just reached out to him. Yeah, we did. I just texted him right now, so hopefully we get some feedback from him before the end of the podcast to provide a little insight. But sorry, I'm getting a little angry and defeated here this morning. I'm like,
what fun fact is? You know what the most profitable Canadian cannabis company is? The Ontario Cannabis Store.
Oh, I've always said that. Yeah.
So I just don't want this to be a mini version of that.
No.
I will say the funniest moment, one of the funniest moment in cannabis legalization history was when Minnesota mistakenly legalized cannabis. So I am rooting for them, and I'm rooting for the small, the cantrip having an end cap on some of the beer and wine stores. That's a great step towards normalizing it. I'm excited for Minnesota, but we're going to need way more info on these.
So one of the other firsts that I thought was very interesting, and this is a huge net positive. Mm-hmm. Bars and restaurants will be able to serve THC beverages on tap.
Wow,
that's huge.
That's the flip side.
Cool.
They are, and Minnesota was the first, like Guap said, Minnesota was the first, I think the first domino to fall in the total wine rollout. for cannabis beverages. So I mean,
Yeah.
to now see them allowing them in public consumption arenas that traditionally serve alcohol straight from the tap, that in itself is another big win.
See you boys in Minnesota this weekend.
I'm big on the beverage angle. I really am. But yeah, I'm big on the beverage angle as far as getting cannabis in people's hands in a non-threatening, safe manner.
Hemp-derived cannabis beverages, Anthony?
So
you imagine how quickly it develops.
So Dank actually opened my eyes to those a little bit.
Yeah.
I like where they're at right now. I like where the products are. I don't like that they don't have the same rigorous testing standards that have to go into cannabis products in the traditional sense, especially as they're all concentrates and distillates that are going in. So you don't really know what is going on as far as purity goes with the input products. I would be willing to bet that guys like Cantrip and guys like Can are using top quality products, as they do seem like the market leaders. So I can't speak to the purity of their products, but the fact that that is not a mandated step as far as the testing standards go, that does give me a little bit of cause for concern.
Tyler Berline just wrote, they can own dispensaries, but they're jeopardizing their state tax banking relationships. Tax monies are essentially exempt from BSA obligations. Direct cannabis revenue is not. In other words, if Bank of America or Chase bank the state, the account is subject to closure the moment a state-owned dispensary starts bringing in income.
I remember that. I remember he was talking about the ramifications on the actual banks that the states bank with, because it's technically illegal money that they're generating on a federal level.
Yeah. I'm rooting for New Hampshire to please have state-run cannabis dispensaries while it's a Schedule I substance. I would just love to see that sort of hypocritical conflict be spotlighted. So I'm low-key rooting for New Hampshire as well to do something like this. Just to, I don't know.
Chris Brady says, let's make an Ethereum-infused beverage. If you can figure that out, sir, I will invest in it.
Yeah.
Speaking outside of cannabis beverage, who is this? 111 writes, just wait till the shroom beverage comes out. Revolutionary.
There's tons of those. Yeah.
Yeah, there's tons of those.
But he's talking about like a psilocybin.
Excuse me.
It's better to just eat the caps versus an actual beverage.
Yeah.
Don't sleep on that industry. Had a good interview with Zappy Zappy.
My next retreat.
We're T-minus August 11th, a little over 2 months before we get feedback from the FDA regarding MAPS, aka Lykos Therapeutics, and their phase 3 MDMA protocol. But that would be massive for that industry and really for the whole mental health space. But they raised $100 million. I can't imagine the valuation of that company if they get FDA approval. Shrooms plus OJ equals win. Ooh.
Daniel gets it.
Yep. All right. Let's move on into the wire. Next topic, MSOs. Last thing I want to bring up is, as we know, there has been a reduction of swap holdings, the price action that took place yesterday, and really the amount of incorrect takes that's happening here in the industry, according to our good friend Sammy J from C21 Investments, who put out a tweet this morning. Guap, I know you got a chance to see this tweet. Do you agree with him? And yeah, I think there is a lot of, there's panic again.
Yeah. So MSOS didn't have a great day yesterday. Everyone starts panicking, looking for the story that caused it or the headline, and not really seeing anything. And it turns out that, like, as Sammy said, 99.8% of the sector's market cap didn't even trade. You've always got the algos trading to themselves in the background. But on top of that, as we just found out this morning, and I don't think this is common knowledge, I think it's making its way around Twitter now, NJUS, a different ETF, wasn't quite done rebalancing yet. And see all those little red numbers in the left column? That's the number of shares they sold of each of those MSOs. So if you get a couple $1 million indiscriminately, I mean, they don't do a great job of offloading these, by the way.
No, they just sell into the market. Yeah, they
dump them, and that can cause a cascade, if you will, of doubt and other retail holders. We've got a longtime listener, Midnight, who let go of out of frustration, let go of his MSO position. So it happens, right? And you see it dumping, and you just, oh God, we're not uplisted yet, and when's Schedule 3 ever going to happen? And it just sort of compounds on itself. It turns out it was just algos in this ETF dumping yesterday, and what
also
MSOS rebounded 3%.
The Dow Jones. Also, the Dow Jones was down 600 points.
Ugly candle on the overall markets. Ugly.
Yeah.
And people fail to. I retweeted the SPY chart yesterday at about the time the peak on FUD was happening. Just like, guys, that's for me. I'm holding 5-10. I'm holding a lot of these tech tickers 5-10 years, so it doesn't affect me as much. But
this ETF's been a pain in the ass for this industry, is it not?
I mean, to put it into perspective, they sold 130,000 shares of Cresco yesterday. Cresco has traded 130,000 shares so far today.
Right.
Okay.
But like we said when we talked about this rebalancing last time, a rebalancing of an ETF that's that small should not be impacting a sector the way it did yesterday.
Right.
Like, that's just how you know that the capital markets are not efficient. The liquidity is not there. There's no bid support. There's no buyers. And that's not a condemnation on the cannabis companies. That's not a condemnation on MSOS. They're not nefariously acting, or any of the other people that they want to point fingers at. I mean, the liquidity is just not there in this space right now. It's not.
One thing, and I find this interesting note, as much as there's been a lot of volatility in the industry right now, important to note that since the HHS recommendation took place last September, very quietly and consistently, New Lake Capital has been one of the best performing stocks in the sector outside of Trulieve, but this stock is up almost 60% and a stock that provides a dividend. So nice job, Anthony Cogniglio. I'm sure he'll appreciate that shout out. Full disclosure, they are a client of ours, but I thought that was rather interesting about how this stock has been up since last September, almost 60%. So job well done on his behalf.
Stock's done really well. And if you notice, Anthony is very engaged in the community. He pops into spaces all the time. And you know what he never, ever talks about?
His company.
Your stock. Right. I don't know why, but yeah, he's good about it.
He talks about everything else but New Lake on the spaces, which is great because with his banking expertise and his experience, he adds a lot of value to the conversation and he adds a lot of value to the community. But I was thinking about that when he was on the spaces the other day. I was like, he just added a lot of value. I think he talked for 20 minutes straight at one point, and he didn't mention New Lake once.
That's
not
great.
A single time. Yeah.
What's the best way to sell yourself? Educate people on the sector that you perform in, right? Without
Correct.
saying your name.
Correct.
Yep, that's for sure. All right, that wraps up. Go ahead. That wraps up Into the Wire, our first segment. And now I'm sure a lot of people used off last week, but now it's time for segment number 2. Dan from the Chart Guys. Cue the music, Arns. Woo! Was that you? Go up. Dan, good to see you. How are you, my friend?
Glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. Got a big plans this long weekend?
I'm heading to Charleston with a group of people to play some beach volleyball all weekend.
That sounds like fun.
Love
how's the temperature in Charleston?
It's gonna be hot. It's gonna be upper 80s.
It's humid That's beautiful
nice.
city though. I love Charleston.
Summer is here, that's for sure. All right, I know you've basically mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, and that's where we are as far as the cannabis space. But before we get into that, let's dive actually into the crypto space. I do want to get into the Ethereum ETF, but first things first, let's bring up Bitcoin and what are we seeing right now?
So there's only one resistance zone coming from all-time highs. It's pretty much 72 to 74 if we want to just use some nice round numbers. And we've rejected there a couple of times, and we pulled back just earlier this week under that level as well. And the big thing that I'm watching for into next week, the question I have is, can the bears confirm a daily downtrend as the result of the next bounce? If they do, then we're likely going to have a sideways June, just tightening up the weekly time frame. If they don't, then of course the bulls are going to head to test that all-time high again. So try to build a base of support here down around 66,000. But really, I like posing questions to myself, and that's essentially it. Do we see bears confirm the daily downtrend as a result of the next bounce or not? That's the next bit of information that I need to determine probabilities as we head into the start of June.
All right. Well, we got news last night. Obviously, the ETF for Ethereum was approved. That was around 7 o'clock last night, Anthony, if I'm correct. But what have we seen since, and what are you anticipating throughout over the weekend?
So this was a massive repricing where the market anticipated, 20, 25% chance of this happening. And then literally almost overnight, it was then a 75% chance of happening. So this is, when everybody got the word, whoa, they're scrambling to make this happen. And then it became official. And so the key resistance is where we came from up here, 4,100. And so that's the most important level. And essentially, we're just digesting this move right now. This is the 4-hour chart. And again, this is the same thing that we see in cannabis. You got your big candle with a lot of volatility, and then you look to tighten up within that. And so the direction that breaks over the weekend is going to help us determine the short term. But one of the major things I'm watching is the ETH BTC chart. This helps us determine who's strong. Should I be looking at Bitcoin or Ethereum? And if we look long term, Bitcoin has been outperforming Ethereum for years, and a big change this week. But we have to confirm a trend change, because we've had these big candles that did not result in the trend change that you need. And so as we head into the summer, can we confirm that trend change to tell us, ETH is the spot to be for now? And, we have this situation where we don't know exactly when the ETF is going to begin trading. We know that, capital inflows could potentially push the price higher when that happens. It could be a week, it could be 2 months. So we're patiently waiting for that. But from a fundamental perspective, it's very interesting to compare it to the cannabis sector, where you've got essentially, Trump comes out and says, I'll accept crypto in my campaign. And then Biden scrambles and says, wait, I will too, because Trump was trying to use crypto against him, saying, if you like crypto, I'm your candidate. And, if you're in a cannabis space, you're praying that happens. You want Trump to come out and try and take it from Biden and say something positive about the space, but that has not happened at this point. But it has become a battle between the two parties for an election topic that they're going to be talking about.
Yeah, that's interesting to say the least. One could only hope with the cannabis space too, but I don't think that's going to happen. But that would be extremely helpful as we switch down to cannabis. Go ahead, Anthony. I saw you nodding your head a couple times there.
No, I was going to say it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Ethereum pricing wise fundamentally, because when the Bitcoin ETFs came on, I think we saw Bitcoin retrace to like 44. When everybody thought it was going to be a huge rally, it was actually sell the news for it a little bit. It had to digest, and then the price rebounded. Curious to see what happens with Ethereum after that 25% run up earlier in the week.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So here's Bitcoin. We ran up into the headline. Then it was a sell the news reaction. And then the actual capital inflows went to work. And so, I was on point in terms of anticipating a sell the news. And I was surprised and incorrect with the amount of follow through that actual capital led to in terms of buying the spot Bitcoin.
Midnight,
that too, and there's some market. I'm also curious to see what the market dynamics look like around staking, because unlike Bitcoin, a lot of people buy Ethereum and they never want to sell Ethereum because they stake it, they generate the yield from it. So I'm curious to see what the institutional guys are going to do that are aggregating all of this ETH, and if they're even going to be allowed to stake it. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think they're going to. They're going to be allowed to stake it.
They had to take it out of the ETF prospectus or whatever it was in a rush to get these approved. So staking can't be, and that's part of the argument is, why am I going to buy an ETF that just sits there when I can buy ETH and earn yield while it's sitting there? And so that's going to be interesting to see that dynamic.
The only thing there is Main Street's not going to realize that dichotomy. They're just going to be like, oh, it's Ethereum, I want to put it in my portfolio, let me buy ETH and just sit on it. And that's the one thing. If you start talking about staking to like just mom and pop investors or like Main Street in general, that's when they just give you a blank stare and they're like, I don't even want to deal with it. They just abandon the conversation.
Dan, we had to go back to January, I think it's 10th or 11th, when the spot ETF Bitcoin was approved. How did it perform the next 30 days after that initial date? Is that something you could bring up?
Yeah, I got it right here. So we were the 10th and 11th, we were trading 49,000. And then 1 month later, pretty much the same level. But that's when it's right before it started to take off.
So Midnight, you bring up a good comment, because that's indeed what Mark Yusko said to us yesterday. What often happens is these big companies will short, and then 30 to 60 days, drive it through the roof. That's something that he did mention, but we'll see how it happens. But interesting take on why they do that. Obviously, they want to get in and make sure they get in at a favorable price, but we shall see on how that performs. Let's switch now to cannabis and MSOS. And I know liquidity was basically a major question 2 weeks ago that you were on, and we're still in that situation now.
Dan loves rising wedges.
Well, this is just one that we were watching. Honestly, I did not think that this one was going to confirm just because of, I had to see the reaction to the headline and then, okay, this is what's shaping up. But before we got the headline, I was like, I'm watching this and I'm cautious of it, but I don't think this is a rising wedge. And lo and behold, we've got the break to multiple month lows. And this is, again, the pattern is when you break straight into consolidation, break straight into consolidation, break straight into consolidation, just shows bulls are tired. They just don't have the momentum to follow through. And so we now have a clear bear break. And, it's the analogy would be the sector was going down over the last week on its own. So let's just say we're on a lake or we're on a river and there's a small flow going in this direction. And then the broader market yesterday is a wind that comes in and pushes it even faster. Yeah. So it's just accelerating what was already happening. And then, of course, as you guys mentioned, that other ETF doing some selling. Again, with so little liquidity, I don't know anybody buying cannabis stocks. Anybody that I know interested in the sector has been in for months, if not years. And so, where's the bid support and the buyers are going to be coming from? And that's the issue in the space right now. And so if we're looking at MSOS in the short term, I just like to keep it simple as much as I can. And so I find, this is a 4-hour chart. I generally don't use the 4-hour chart for stocks much, but when I see it reject from the EMA 12 here, just time and time again, I just keep it simple and say, if 4-hour EMA 12 is resistance, the bears have full control. And again, the daily trend is now going to be our guide. We tightened up. We confirmed a daily downtrend. We got tons of space. We can bounce 10% plus and just set a daily lower high. So some people ask me, where's your buy level? I'm not going to be entering into weakness. I have to see bulls have to give me a reason to want to get back in. I know I'm not going to nail the bottom. I know I'll be buying a bit off the bottom if they do prove something to me. But again, it's just I just don't like the setup here, knowing the summer is coming and knowing a lack of headlines is potentially on the table. So in the short term, there's a little gap down here at 787. Those are often targets. I'm keeping an eye out on that level, but just going to take it one day at a time and be very patient before looking to get back in the sector, knowing that my timeline is, let's just say we fast forwarded. And if we get to August, if it's August right now, I'm paying extra attention and looking to try and position for September, October, November.
Right. So do you think of people that are still in right now and knowing what's ahead of us and really not a lot of new money, let's face it, no new money, it's coming in right now. Look, I don't want to give people investment advice or what they should and shouldn't be doing because everybody has their own strategy and formula. But on paper, it just looks like, would it not make sense? Yes, we've been down, but does it make sense to get out now and wait and come back in the fall?
Not now. That's why I was talking about you look at price action as almost a second chance. This is your second chance to get out after this big red candle. This is your second chance to get out. And so, someone asked me, yesterday, should I be selling? And honestly, the second chance was up around $9.50, $10. And so now that we're 20% below that level, I don't think, I never want to be selling into fear. I always want to be selling into bounces if we're in a downtrend.
All right. Let's now move to AI. Dell. This is a heck of a stock. Would you say again, Anthony? It's up what? 100%?
It's up about 100% year to date.
Yeah, that is an uptrend. Look at this. So weekly EMA 12, and we've just been riding this thing for May 23, an entire year of holding weekly EMA 12 support. And again, you want to keep it simple. If you got a long-term position, I will not sell Dell if weekly EMA 12 is support. And then we can say when that is lost, we know something is shifting and something is different. And, Truly was holding weekly EMA 12 for a while. And it's now potentially this week losing it for the first time in, the whole year. So we want to find those things that we can identify. And this is, just beast mode. This is just, like, it's not the flashy gains of NVDA quite, but it's in the same thread. Microsoft, NVDA, Dell, they are all performing massively. And that's part of this is a monthly stair-step pattern, just a higher low every single month for well over a year. But
Wow.
part of the reason of the despair in the cannabis sector is the opportunity cost elsewhere. I mean, you see these other places where there's a lot of cash being made in Bitcoin and crypto over the last year, and then these other places. And that almost just magnifies the despair. You know, okay, I'm looking 5 years out. That's fine. But while I'm sitting here and my money's eroding, there are other opportunities that I'm missing, not to mention 5% risk-free. So that's just psychologically, that's a lot of what's going on in the space as well.
All based on AI server demand right now, that's for sure. And they have their latest earnings, if I'm correct. It's next Thursday, May 30th, correct, Anthony?
30th is the earnings, correct.
Yeah.
30th is the earnings, correct. I mean, it's interesting because the average price target on the street, I think, is at like 135. So, I mean, I'm curious to see what the re-ratings are after this earnings report next week.
Huh. All right, last chart I want to bring up. Probably the most well-known stock in the world over the past 12 months, NVIDIA, recently did their stock split. So they're going to go from 2.5 billion outstanding shares to a total of 20 billion. Does that concern you at all, Dan?
I mean, you never, when you're talking shares, you know, you obviously want a more contained share count. But if the price, you know, is going up massively, and it's essentially a fire, everybody wants to have this stock in their portfolio. SPY and QQQ, the ETFs, they've been increasing their exposure significantly. And so if price is performing, that's the only thing that matters. And, you know, maybe an inflated share count matters if we're in a bear market, and that's, you know, something that's going to be used against it as a headline. I can definitely foresee that happening. But until the party stops, until the music stops, it doesn't matter. Just price matters. And it's performing better than anyone could ever hope as far as having that asset in your, I mean, we're up 1,000%, almost 1,000% in like a year and a half. It's insane.
It's insane.
It's, in my opinion, it's become the most important individual stock in the market. I used to say that about Apple for 8+ years. And then I could see over this year, we could very clearly see something is different with Apple. The correlation to the NASDAQ was drastically shifting. I must have said it 15 times. And then it comes out, Buffett sold a massive amount of shares. And it's, oh, that makes sense. You're going to break a correlation if you've got constant millions of shares being sold. And so that for me just flipped Apple and NVDA is now, this is the most important single individual stock in the market. And, you know, I was day trading yesterday and I was watching the 1 minute time frame of NVDA, and its bounces were impacting gold miners. It's just like, there's so many intercorrelated automated trading systems in the markets these days. And NVDA is now the most important stock, and there will be no fear in the broader market if this thing is still hitting all-time highs.
Yeah, no signs of it slowing down right now either. But yep, most important and most popular stock of the last 12 months. That wraps up this week's segment. Any comments below? Anybody want some questions that you want us to reach out to Dan? Any charts you want us to basically go over? Feel free to let us know and leave some comments below. Dan from The Chart Guys, where can we find you again?
ChartGuys.com, @ChartGuys on Twitter. And again, utilize the free resources on our website. Use the search function, ebooks, articles, videos. It's there to help.
Awesome. I appreciate your time, sir, and enjoy your long weekend in the beach volleyball.
Thanks. Have a great Friday, guys.
Thanks,
All
Dan.
right, thanks, Dan. Interesting. Man, that Dell chart. Holy cow. Very nice stock to be in, that's for sure.
Humorman comment. You guys see that?
Psychedelics, I'd be
be
guessing.
Okay.
I'd be guessing at this point.
Well, I never want to give investment advice, but Compass Pathways, you want to always, like, they are definitely one of the biggest companies, if not the biggest company in the space. But yeah, but there's a lot that's still, like, let's face it, you know, could there be an approval? There could be, but it's home run or strike out. You know, I think truthfully at the end of the day, if they were to get approval, that would obviously create a lot of attention towards a lot of companies. I've outlined the amount of money that's been raised for a number of companies in this space so far this year, which is very compelling. But one can only imagine if there's an actual FDA approved drug, that would be massive, obviously, for this industry. And I think a lot more money would start coming in. But Compass Pathways has always been the biggest company in the space. But again, this is not investment advice. Contact, obviously, your broker and get advice from him. That wraps up second segment. Chart Guys with Dan for the Chart Guys, I should say. And now it's time for Mic Drops with Guap.
It's time for everybody's favorite Friday segment, Mic Drop with Guap.
Happy Friday. What do you think of that?
You know what I think of that.
You know what we're laughing at.
Oh, I know you are, buddy. I know you are.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I first off want to say that we are reading all 4,000 plus of the comments on the Federal Register. We're going to pick out some of the best ones and spotlight them next Friday. I think it's a lot of positive comments, actually, but we'll
I think it's noted that on Tuesday there was a couple hundred comments, and now it's ballooned to what, 5,000. Christopher Brady, thank you, here today. So, a lot of comments.
Yeah. So I had a whole fun FUD front page thing planned, but we are running a bit long. I might try to shorten it up, but if we could bring up that first graph, everyone from Sam to people in the MSO space to just about everybody was sharing this graph, spotlighting the fact that daily cannabis consumers have now eclipsed daily alcohol consumers.
Yeah.
This confirms, let's say, our thesis on some level. It's worth noting these are self-reported numbers. So if someone were to call you on a survey and ask you, do you consume cannabis daily? Even if you did, you may not be inclined to say yes. So I would imagine the numbers for both alcohol and cannabis are actually higher than self-reported. But it's just a fantastic looking graph. It's something we've known for a long time, that the normalization of cannabis is here. And MSNBC and CBS and a bunch of news outlets ran with this story. So it was nice to see it in the mainstream media.
That's for sure. Let's I know you guys were looking at some of these comments. Any things that stand out to you that might grab people's attention?
So not individually, but thematically, there's a lot of comments that say, well, rescheduling is tight, but we do need descheduling overall. There's a lot of people in there that are like, I'm a veteran, I was on opioids and I'm using cannabis for pain. To be honest, I went through the first like 500 just like scanning. There's not a lot of negative comments in there. There's not a lot of like overarching like negative scare tactics or anything that's in there. It seems like it's a lot of genuine comments from a lot of people that want to see cannabis rescheduled and that ultimately want to see it descheduled and that they actually want change.
That surprises me a little bit based on what we were anticipating, but that's a good thing.
I mean, I went through probably 10% of them. So, I mean, I'm sure there's negative bombs in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Some of them are like paragraphs. Yeah.
Well, it was good to get feedback from Emily and Jason and Josh earlier this week, just how that judge came fully prepared and some of the intellectual conversations that were taking place. So like to my point from earlier in the podcast, let's just have a level playing field. Come do your homework and let's just have an open conversation. And I don't think that's asking for too much, considering that, 5,000 comments is just getting started in the first couple of days. You wonder how many comments basically we're going to finish with, but that'll be a telling sign if there's tens of thousands of comments, and let's say the majority of them are positive. What's that say? That's data. And that needs to be probably sent to Washington to say, here's the proof.
Well, I mean, if you've got cannabis polling 70% nationally as accepted, I'd be willing to bet that 70% of the comments in those public comments would probably skew positive.
Yeah, well, that's great.
Yeah.
If you had to predict, go ahead, buddy. No, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
No. Please ask your question. I was gonna tangent off.
No, I got no more questions. I was
going to say, I was listening to this markup, and I in the background as I did other stuff, and right before they were going to talk about the I don't know what to call it, Delta-8 ban amendment, for lack of better words. Right before that, they had a hot mic. I think it's about, I'll tweet it out. It's about 5 or 6 hours into it. The the guy with the mic, his mic was on while they were taking a 3-minute break, and you could overhear one guy saying to him, this is hours into it. It's a long session. They went into the night too, 10:30, 11 o'clock. I don't know when they wrapped up, but he actually said, I'm getting tired. I don't know if I need coffee or whiskey. This is just one congressman talking to another with the hot mic. And then you can hear a lady come and say, your mic's on. So I'll try and post it up, but that was the only funny part of that entire hearing. I gotta say, it was pretty dry.
Here you go with the peanut gallery comments. Canadian cannabis has created a monopoly on the NASDAQ. That doesn't even make sense.
I don't know.
There's no monopoly within the Canadian cannabis industry, I can assure you.
There's
plenty of
2 years.
Yeah.
Listen more. Christopher Brady, actually, I was going to ask that question. You should be taking bets on how many will end up. You guys want to do that? How many comments do you think there would be by the end of it all? If you had to guess.
Oh, wow.
I will say 22,000.
22,000 comments.
I'm just going to have to go with 42,000 for obvious reasons. 42,000.
We're at 5 in 3 days, and you guys think
I'm willing to bet that the velocity of comments is going to slow down dramatically, because it's definitely going to be front loaded.
Okay, so 22,000.
I'm going with
Anthony.
I'm going with 42,420.
Christopher Brady says over 1 million. That would be impressive. Sam would have to be working overtime.
Yeah, right. How many fake accounts do they have to
Rob's
create?
going with 42,420. Anthony's going with 22,000.
Robert Griffith says 36,000. That's a realistic number. Still
I
going to
don't
take
really know.
22,000.
I really don't know. I'm just going to be different just because I can't do. I'm going to go 78,141 comments.
How many?
78,141.
Okay.
What's the winner get?
So this is like the price, but this is like the Price is Right though. So if it's if it's 30-something thousand, that means you guys are all disqualified because you're over and I'm under, so I win. Just so we're clear. Cool.
That's right.
Way to
If
make
you don't know what the Price is Right, if you don't know what the Price is Right is, you're not a 90s kid and you've never had a sick day in school. So I will leave it at that.
You cannot go over.
42,421 for the show.
Right, I've got to go, otherwise my wife is.
He's got to go. All right, gents. Listen, smash that like button. Leave lots of comments. Even though if it's not the greatest times, look, the industry's growing. Just relax. Go have a margarita. Go have a beer. Do whatever. Have a charcoal barbecue this weekend. Just enjoy your time. We're in this for the long haul. We're providing, giving you information and advice on basically the direction of the industry. Not investment advice, but bringing on thought leaders. Just everything's going to be okay. All right, gents. Enjoy your long weekend. No live stream on Monday. We're going to have a pre-record that I'll push out at 4 o'clock. What it is, I don't know yet. I'll figure something out, but it'll be out there. It'll be good. In the meantime, Memorial Day weekend has begun. Take care.
Yeah, that was a big missed opportunity. Margaritas and beers when we're talking about cannabis, Mr. Dales.
Ooh, sorry.
Yeah. Cannabis beverages.
Cannabis beverages. Screwed that one up. All right, I'm going to go have a cannabis beverage. Take care. Have a good weekend.
Medical cannabis, not margaritas.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching our latest podcast. Lots of momentum building. You guys getting all excited? Leave comments below. Again, we want to take this viral. Smash that like button and make sure to click on that bell for all notifications as we start to bring on bigger and bigger guests. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, the Baked In newsletter, by logging on to thedalesreport.com. And we want to take this viral, as I said, and make this community grow. So make sure to subscribe on that channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.